Today, we're going to talk about three things. We're going to talk about closing costs, how pre-qual incorporates closing costs as part of the pre-qualification process, and how you can work with debts and liabilities in the pre-qual too. And then lastly, we get into subject rentals and rules, how to customize those rules on the app. So let's get started here. I have the calculator here. As you know, the pre-qual 2 now incorporates closing costs. Closing costs are super important because if a client says, I have this much money, you need to make sure, both from the lender's perspective, you need to make sure a certain amount is reserved for closing costs, and you can only use the other portion for down payment for their purchase. So figuring out the closing costs is a bit of a challenge. The pre-qual 2 takes the total available funds and intelligently distributes them into a down payment component and a closing cost component. And we use the down payment to actually calculate the maximum purchase price. Of course, you know, closing cost depends on the purchase price. So there is a bit of validation in between that, so that we make sure we have sufficient closing costs and not too much and not too little. Okay, so I will show you how that looks, and we're just going to do a simple scenario with the pre-qual. So I'm going to start a new scenario. Let's get started. I'll use Toronto as our starting city. Condo. No. What's the total available funds? Let's do 300. You have outstanding debt. So we're just going to say no to debts here. And we're employed. Let's put 150 as income and see what happens. Excellent credit. Okay. We walked through this much slower in the last training, so that and I was explaining what each screen does, but this time let's just go through it very quickly. Okay, so if I scroll down here under home price, you can see that even though I use $300,000 as my available funds, my closing cost takes $19,000, and my actual down payment I can use towards a purchase is $280,000. Now, I want to show you how it actually works, the closing cost piece, so that you can customize it for your own need. So we have modes. Let me just go all the way here, go into edit. If I scroll one more over here, I see closing cost. Now we got three modes, actually. First mode I want to introduce to you is the reserve a percentage. It basically takes a percentage of the purchase price and makes sure that that amount is removed from the total fund. So it's reserved a percentage. And to enable that, you just tap on the reserve. Now, in some provinces, the lenders will require you to have 1.5%. So you can set it up to be 1.5%. You can see that now my closing cost is 1.5% of my max purchase price. And then, of course, you can also choose to do actual. Now, this is the second mode. This is the true cost. So let me scroll down. I'll show you what it is. So, for example, in Toronto, we have a land transfer tax. That fee stays right here, $28,000 for this purchase price. We also have a first-time home buyer because I selected first-time home buyer. There's a rebate. So that's a rebate portion. And then there's other things that you can customize yourself. You can add in an appraisal. You can add in a, let's say, home inspection 500, legal cost 1,500. All that money is reserved from the total available funds so that the client doesn't have to worry about how much of their total savings they need to allocate towards the closing costs. And you have this other mode is Automax. So this Automax basically takes the maximum of either the reserve or the actual. Last but not least, the third mode is just ignore everything. Forget about closing costs. We just turn it off. Now it's using the maximum, the full available funds towards closing costs. And of course, we show a little bit of warning. Hey, don't forget closing costs. Some people will forget it. I always have it turned on. So I actually like to know what you would prefer your default on your app to be for your clients. So I'm going to start a new poll is what would you like your default to be? So the options are, you want your client to have based on a percentage that you control. So you can set up, I want all my clients to use 1.5%, and it'll just do that. Or you can say, I want them to always, when they go through the wizard at the end, I want them to see the actual closing costs with land transfer taxes, etc. I can see that a lot of people are choosing actual closing costs. This is so good to hear, because it's usually higher than that percentage based. Of course, in Alberta is a different story. In Alberta, even though the lender requires 1.5% and there's exceptions, actual closing costs could be significantly less because there's no land transfer tax. There's only the title registration, and that's minimal compared to other provinces. Okay, perfect. So I think I got some good answers here. I'm going to share that result with you as well, so you get to see it. So we got 66% saying actual closing cost is a good default for the app to use. And that's it. Now, if you wanted to actually have a percentage base, I want to show you where it is. So under qualification, at the bottom of that, you can set a default minimum closing cost ratio. So your clients will have a choice between actual and the one that you set up to be the default. They can customize it, by the way. Clients cannot customize the percentage. They can only use what you provided them or the actual. So that's what they see on their app if they were to go edit. Cool.